Okay, let's get going here. Thank you, everyone. As usual, I am Paul Byrne, the Research Data Services Librarian. Um, and today's Qualtrics workshop is on using survey flow, which can be very powerful and help you make some really cool kinds of things in Qualtrics. Uh, Before we really get into it, are there any questions about anything that we've done previously? Okay, then let's get going. As you can see here, I've already created a very simple survey. This will help us to see most of the things that you can do with survey flow. Just a basic consent question, uh, our favorite BMI calculation, and a couple more questions we'll see based on their the respondent's answer to BMI. Um, to get to survey flow, you come over here to this little icon way over here on the left, and you can see. Can I make that bigger? No. Okay, can you all see that? It might be kind of small on the Zoom. Um, so you can see each of the blocks that we had in the main survey. Uh, and if you click toggle questions, it will show you the questions, which is useful. Of course, as I mentioned very early on, it's good to name your blocks as well. Uh, so, you can see it in the survey flow here. To get to the various things that you can do in the survey flow, um, you can click add below. And then you get this, what do you want to add? And you can show another block, so you can show the same block multiple times. And I'll show these. I'm just going to go through them quickly. Branching is like doing an if statement. Uh, and this is probably what they call element that you will use most of the time in survey flow. Embedded data we've mentioned over the last few weeks. It's closely related to piped text. It's a way of creating data and collecting data that the respondent doesn't have to answer a question for. The randomizer is a way of randomizing the blocks, and we're going to take a look at that as well. Web service, I don't see too many people using, or at least they don't ask me about it. It's a way of bringing in information from another website. So if you want the latest weather or stock prices or something, and that other website allows you to pull their data, this is how you could get that uh, into your survey on a automatically updated basis. I have to delete that so I can get back to here. Text sentiment. This is for doing. Qualtrics has a fairly rudimentary text analysis ability. And to do that, you need to say what answers you want to be able to analyze, and then put in the various kinds of tags and things that you do in text analysis. If you really need to do content analysis or text analysis of your respondents' answers, I strongly suggest downloading that data into a real text analysis package, NVivo, Atlas TI, or any number of other things. Supplemental data, you don't actually have access to it. It's a way of having data that you can pull in to a survey on the fly as the person is answering it. So, you type in, a word or something and it completes the sentence or the answer. It's kind of restrictive, and I think you can only have 200 data sets for the entire university. So they're only letting a very select group of people use that. Um, the group element we'll see later. It's a way of grouping various blocks and other elements together so that they're processed as a piece. That will make a lot more sense when we actually see it. The authenticator is a way of making sure only certain people can get into your survey. One is to use a contact list, and then you select which contact list you want to use. And I'm going to do this real quick. And so you create an authentication field in the contact list. You have a password. This is fairly rudimentary. Doing it this way, if you want to authenticate and you're sending your survey to people outside of Syracuse University, this is basically the only way to do it. The other method is using single sign-on. This will only work with people who have a net ID in the university. There are instructions and guides on my Qualtrics webpage that will take you through everything that you need to do for this, as well as using the contact method. So if you need or want to do that, I suggest looking at those. End of survey. You could perhaps use this quite a bit too. It's nice. It's a way of being able to do something at the end of the survey besides just say thank you for filling out the survey. Of course, you have to override the options and the default end of survey. Okay, fine. You can have a custom end of survey message in your survey message library. You can redirect the respondent to a different URL when they're done. And this is actually what happens in the sign-in. When you sign in to come into the workshop and you fill that out and click submit, it then sends you to the Zoom link. And you can do a few other things, send an additional thank you, don't increment quota counts. This would be useful if you're filtering people out, say they don't consent to filling out your survey. You don't want that to affect your quota. You can show them a response summary. It's the summary of their own responses. Sometimes that can be useful. I know people have done that. Do not record any personal information and remove panel association. As it says, not recommended. If you're doing very sensitive kind of asking for very sensitive kind of information, you might want to do this. I have a couple of videos on anonymity in Qualtrics. And if you're doing something like that, I strongly suggest you watch those tutorials because there are different options that you can do in different places in Qualtrics, and which ones you use when will affect what kind of data you get back out of it. So you really want to know what's going to happen before you do it. And then do not record survey response. And again, not recommended. Um, if for whatever reason you don't want a particular response, you are much better off deleting it yourself, not leaving it up to Qualtrics uh, to not even record it in the first place. And once you download your data, you're going to go through it and clean it and, perhaps take out people who didn't finish it or, any number of reasons. Do that yourself rather than letting Qualtrics decide for you. We'll look at that a little bit more in a moment. And then I think there's just reference survey. This is useful if you have several surveys ongoing at the same time and they're each collecting at least partly the same information, say demographic variables. Um, if you need, as the surveys are going, you need to make a change, say add an ethnicity or add a country or something like that. Um, without using the reference survey, you would have to go into each of those surveys and manually make the change in each one. If you only have two or three, that's not the end of the world. But if you have several, uh, it can be prone to errors. You misspell a country name or you forget one of the surveys that you need to change it in. What this does is you can have that part of the survey, your demographic questions, in your library. And what this does is on the fly, it pulls in those questions. So, as I say, if in the future you need to make a change, you just need to go into the survey in your library and make the change there. And then from that point, every time a new respondent comes into the survey, it will pull those new questions. Are there any questions so far? I'm going to go through some of these in detail at this point, the ones that you will use the most. Okay. Now, if you remember from 5 minutes ago, we have the consent block. We ask about questions to calculate BMI. And then we have two other questions. Some people will get one question, some will get others based on the BMI. But first, let's go up here and we can do add below. This is where branching comes in. Can come in a few places, but so it says this branch will not be triggered until you add a condition. We're going to base it off a question, and we've kind of seen these before. You can use embedded data. We haven't created any yet. Device type, you might want to change things depending on whether somebody's sitting at a laptop or using their phone. Whether it's a quota, IP location, a true false question. But we're going to say, do you consent? And if they say no, That's the condition. And you can add conditions. We've kind of seen this before too. You can do and or. You can do a new logic set. As I've said before, if you really this starts getting complicated, go get a cup of coffee, go for a jog, take a nap, and come back to it later. Um, so then we click OK. And so if they don't consent, we don't want them to answer the rest of the survey, obviously. So now we can put add new element here and put a custom end of survey. Now, if we just leave it like this, they'll be sent to the end of the survey and they'll get the standard survey, thank you very much. But you might want to customize that and, have a custom end of survey message. So this could be, are you 18? If they're not 18, you can have a message that says, thank you very much, but you need to be 18. And so, as I say, the person comes in, they answer the consent question. If they say no, then they're kicked out. If they say yes, then they come on to the rest of the survey. Any questions so far? Okay. So here with BMI, we ask how tall are you? How much do you weigh? And so we want to calculate their actual BMI. Now, if you remember last week, the week before when we did piped text, we did that using the piped text. And as I mentioned, you can display that to the respondent, but just using piped text, it won't save that information with the rest of the data, and you won't be able to use it in the survey flow. You have to use embedded data to do that. So we'll do add below and embedded data. I'll click here for a second just so you can see. Create a new field or choose from the drop-down. Value will be set from panel or URL. Set a value now. So all kinds of things you can do with this. So if you do the drop-down, again, it kind of looks like the options that you get with piped data. There's all kinds of other things, survey metadata that you can use doing this. You can add information from a contact list. Or, if this is further on in the survey and you've created other embedded data, you can use embedded data to manipulate and create new embedded data. A lot of the time, you're just going to be creating something new. So I'm going to say BMI. That creates a new field called BMI. And you can go to set a value. And there's a custom value and, again, piped text. So we're going to do survey question. How tall are you? And we also want how much do you weigh? Now, as you can see, this little tiny box is, kind of tough to edit things in. I think I mentioned back when we were doing pipe text, it's a lot easier. You can just copy and paste this into any kind of, Word document, Notepad, whatever, and manipulate the text to create the equation that Qualtrics wants. And I did that. And I am going to follow my own advice for once in my life and copy and paste it from someplace else. One thing you always want to look at or check at least when you're creating um, embedded data is click on options. And really all this does is gives you the ability to set what type of data this is. And that's especially important in Qualtrics. Once you download the data, BMI will be a number and Excel or SPSS will usually recognize that as a number. Um, but Qualtrics won't necessarily. And the ones you're going to use more than anything else, of course, are number, text, and date. These other ones, as it says, one or two word field that has finite set of, it's kind of like a check all that apply type of question. Uh, Same with multi-value and number set. But as I say, by default, it says text because the two questions it's based on are, fill in the blank kind of thing. But you just want to change that to number. If you want it to be able to analyze the text in Qualtrics text analysis part, then you need to click analyze text. And you can do several. The embedded data elements. I'm just going to call this BMI2 for a second because you can also now, I did the drop down here, but you can also set this to a specific number. And now everybody will have a BMI2 that equals 1. And we'll see how this can be used a little bit later. And you could add information from the contact list. And we're going to be talking about contact lists next week, I think. Not everything in Qualtrics is exactly linear. Sometimes, you got to kind of go back and forth with things. So now we have this BMI. So now that we know the person's BMI, we want to use that to determine whether they should answer this question or this question. And so again, we do add below. We do a branch. Click on embedded data. We do BMI is equal to, you have a whole bunch of options here. And we'll say greater than 100. Obviously, I'm just making this up, these numbers up as I go. This isn't the real BMI. Click OK. Now you need to get this in here. So you just click on move, it turns green, and you can just drag it. And we could add an element here, do another branch. I'm going to move this. There so that it's even with the other branch. And the same thing, or well, similar is less than or equal to 100. And we move here. So what happens now is person comes in. If they do not consent, they get booted. If they do, then they come in and they're asked their height and weight. Behind the scenes, we calculate their BMI, and then we use that information to determine which block of questions they get. Now, something you need to make sure to do is click apply to save it. And so let's come back here and then click publish. Do preview. I'm going to say no, and you're booted. And so you see we got, do you like ice cream? Let's go to the survey. I put in 25 and 25, which is less than or equal to 100. And it says, do you like ice cream? Yes, I do. And we can restart. And we get the other question. So you can see the combination of embedded data and branching can be very powerful and give you a lot of different ways to structure your survey. Are there any questions? Okay. Another thing that you might do, especially if you're doing, your thesis, dissertation, other kinds of grant research, is randomizing. I'm going to go to a different survey. And with this, of course, we have the age and the consent block instructions, and then we want people to see one of these 4 blocks, which is basically one of 4 experimental conditions. So come over here to survey flow. I've already done this because you can see how this would take a while for me to click through everything. And so with the randomizer element, as it says, randomly present one of the following elements. And each of these are the blocks. And you can see where the group element helps, because we want to set embedded data based on the experimental condition that they've been assigned to, randomly assigned to, as well as show them the appropriate questions for that condition. And the group element just, as you can see, makes that a lot easier to do. Let's take a look at, as you move elements under the randomizer, this number will increment to however many are underneath there. And so you might want to do one, you might want to do two, depending on your particular application. You can see here it says evenly present elements. What this will do is Qualtrics will do its best to make sure that the same number of respondents are assigned to each of these groups. If this were not checked, you could get a different number of people in each group, and it might be close, it might be way off. Okay, so for right now, I'll click apply here, just so you can see. Something that is really very, very useful in Qualtrics is this generate test responses. And even if you're just doing a regular survey, you're not doing any of this fancy stuff, it's a good idea to generate some test responses and just look at it. Does it make sense? Or perhaps some questions are not being shown, or you're not getting the kind of data you think you should be. By default, it says 5 responses. 5 responses really isn't enough to test anything. So I'm going to say 100. Just to show you additional options, allow unanswered questions. You might want to do that in generating your test data. Show verbose output. This will make more sense in a second. Additional URL parameters, I've never used that. So we'll click generate. It can take a moment or 2 or 3. And here's the output. If you had said show verbose output, it just would have given you a lot more information here, which I've never found particularly useful. So we'll close that. We can go back to the survey flow. And you don't really see anything right now, but I'm going to click evenly present so that we get this little link here that says edit count. And you can see it generated data. And there are different numbers of people in each group, anywhere between 42 and 59, which is a pretty big spread for only 4 groups. And you can fix that if you go to reset all counts, sets everything back to 0, click save, and we have evenly present elements checked. Got to click apply because we changed that. We'll go back to the survey and we'll generate some more test responses. And so we'll come back again and we'll click on edit count. And you can see now there's the same number in each group. Most of the time, that is what you are going to want. There might be times it's not an issue, or maybe you do want uneven numbers in each group. That's certainly up to you. If you do this randomization, I strongly urge you to generate the test data and come in and make sure that at least this part is working how you want it to. Each time you come in and make a change to how the randomization is working, you want to reset all counts. Because if you don't, each time you generate more test data, all of these will increment. And it'll be difficult to tell if this new change that you made is doing what you expected it to do, because it's being clouded by what you did before. So again, you click reset, click save, and you're good to go. The other way to, and I recommend again, to test and make sure that the data that you're getting out of the randomization is to actually download that test data into Excel, SPSS, whatever it is you want to use. And we're going to go through more of this when we do the reporting later. But you click on export, you get a whole bunch of options here, which we'll talk about more. I'm just going to use Excel. And what you need to do is come down here to more options. And then there's this export viewing order data for randomized surveys. You want to check that. And I'm going to cancel because the download can take a little while, and I've already done that. All right, can you see this Excel sheet?
Yeah, we can see it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. And this is what your data will look like if you download it into Excel. And we're going to go over all these different things. A lot of stuff that Qualtrics does by default. Then all your questions. Then at the very end, it has these fields. FL, DO, etc. And it says block randomizer, display order. And so you can see which block each person was shown. You can make sure that they're being shown only one if that's what you want. You can see how, as these were generated, how Qualtrics put each person in. These tags. This will allow you to go back. We're going to go back to the survey. And to show you this before we did that, I'm going to the survey flow. And up here, there's this little thing that to click show flow IDs. Now you can see in the upper right corner of each of these, it might be very tiny on your screen because it's very tiny on mine. It says FL71, FL67, 72, etc., 73. And that corresponds to each of these. And so that's a way, if things look weird, you can go back between the data and your survey flow and see, is something being skipped? just another way to test your randomization. If you do this, um, you need to test it every which way you can. Because once you distribute your survey, that's it. Um, you can't go back in, or well, if you go back in after some people have already answered the survey and changed this, then you've really messed up your whole design. And you really don't want to do that because you spent a lot of time doing all of this. And it will absolutely ruin your data if you change any of this after it's been distributed. Um, so you want to run that test data, look at it, uh, look at your counts and look at the data and make sure everything looks the way you expect it to. Any questions? All right, I'm just going to show you one other um, thing that you can do, and you can get really fancy with this. This is a different experimental design. As you can see, there's a lot more blocks to be shown. And again, naming your blocks will make life a lot easier, especially when you're looking at your survey flow. So as you can see, you can nest all kinds of things. So with this, um, your respondent comes in and is assigned to one of these four groups randomly. Their independent variables of their group are set. And then they are shown three blocks in a random order for each person. So you see it says randomly present three of the following elements. Well, there's three elements. So they'll see all of them, but it will be shown in a random order for each respondent. And you can do branching under this as well. Um, all kinds of uh, neat things you can do. Um, if you do something like this here, again, you need to go in and change each of your edit counts, reset all of them so that, as you're testing, you're getting the correct numbers in each one. And so, if you click on this element, you can see how it's highlighted. And you can see everything that's underneath that particular element. So in this case, they consent, they read the instructions, they're sent to uh, one of these four groups. And then once they're in there, they're shown the three blocks in a random order. And then when they're done with that, they come down and everybody answers the last question. Okay, are there any questions? Either I've put you all to sleep, totally confused all of you, or you're all now experts in survey flow.
This has been really cool. Thank you.
All right, great. So if there are no questions, thank you very much, and I will see all of you uh, same time next week, Thursday at 3 o'clock. And I think the next class is distributing your survey. Different ways of distributing it, and we will be talking about those contact lists that I've been mentioning. All right, have a good week, everyone.